Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode. All right, another installment of MixStream. This would be MixStream number 53, and it's been a while since I've done one of these. Right, so thanks to everyone, right, subscribers and patrons, right, those who have helped support. This has been quite a journey. Okay, so the Big Stream has been a series of live streams that I've been doing for the past couple of years. It's a project that started out during the pandemic, correct? Good old times where I showcased the mixing process behind some of the projects that have been going on here in Studio 2105, right? So it's all over on my YouTube channel. You can go and check it out, right? This is number 53, so it's like been over 50 plus, right? Live streams of mixes where I showcase the mixing process across different genres. You have rock, you have pop, you have hip hop, right? Do we even have EDM? There's so many different genres, right? That I've mixed as well. So check it out if you really want. If you're into this kind of thing, right? Into the long form. Technical geeky nerding out over right EQs, compressors, automation, and stuff like that. Right, this channel's for you. Right, there are lots of stuff as well. So I do recommend that you do check out. Right, a lot of other videos, tutorials, and other sort of content that's related to audio engineering, music production, recording, mixing, music business, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. Okay, do subscribe. Okay, and hopefully, right, you can support the channel. Okay, so let's get into this, right? And this time around, I'm going to change up the format a little bit, right? So in the past, I would actually really start the mix process from scratch, but I want to try something a little bit different today. So, right, I'm gonna be very clear. The mix is actually done, right? It's been done, right? It's been already been approved. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a walkthrough through this process, right? So one of the main reasons is that sometimes the if I were to really mix the track and go through step by step, the live stream goes on really long, and and we start to lose people after an hour or so. Or folks just can't stay up too late, or maybe they got other plans, or heck, they've got there's so much other stuff and content and distraction and entertainment out there, right? So, right. But having said that, I'm really, really thankful that if you're watching this right now, or even if you're watching this after on the replay, right, later on, really, really appreciate it that you took the time to come down and, right, go through this with me. So, a little bit about the featured artist, okay? Iramukatirma, okay, right? I know I butchered up the pronunciation. Okay, let me just turn off the slideshow for a bit, and here we go. Okay, right. Just give me a second now. Let me just change some of the text here. Okay, Extreme 33. Very, very cool. All right. Okay. So a little bit about our featured artist. Okay. All right. The detailed description is actually down in the video description. You can actually check it out below. Right. So she's a singer songwriter. And the very very cool thing about her, right? Professionally, she's actually a doctor, man. So right. Let's call her doc. Okay. Right. So she's currently now working on her album, right? Her debut album. And this album is actually produced by Afik, right? Afik Ikram, or most folks actually call him, refer to him as Afik PB, right? Fun fact: Afik, right, is one of my former staff, one of my former interns, in fact, right. And then after moving on, after he finished his internship, he worked here for a brief moment in time, and he still, right, does all of his projects as a freelance music producer, right. He's got his band Period Bridge. He's got Color Heart as well. He used to produce for Loco, right, and the hit single Pujaan Hati. And so, right, Afik is actually the right producer, the person who's actually the mastermind and the brainchild. I'm just the one who's just doing the mixing, okay, just this little part. So the title of this song is Pain, right? And really, really cool. The song is really interesting, right? One of the fascinating things that I think when Afik shared about her music and the project is that she's really unconventional with a lot of things in the melodies, in the song structures, in the arrangements. Almost all the songs do not adhere to your typical right song format, which is like the AB song form or the ABC, right? The songs very often right take a tangent, they morph into a different mood or a different style, dynamically wise as well, right? You have very, very big contrasts and stuff, and you can actually sort of hear it lah, all right, when we listen to the mix. So let's, without further ado, let's get it down right into the mix breakdown. Okay, in this case, not really a mix process. So the first thing that we always do, okay, now what I will do first of all is let me just turn off some of the master bus processing so we sort of can hear the before and after. All right, bear one thing, definitely when I turn on the master bus processing, it's going to get loud. But first thing of every mix, before you even start to touch any of the EQs, pull up any plugin, is to always get a rough mix first, okay? Get a rough balance only with your fader balance, maybe a little bit of panning to sort of put things right in the stereo feel. But just that. This is what is described as the framing and discovery process of a mix. Why framing? Okay, framing here, it's like kind of putting up a frame and putting up a scaffolding that supports the entire song, the entire mix. You want to put it up. That is the purpose of the rough mix. And during that process of framing, right, you also do the discovery process. You discover, first of all right, obviously the song structure. You hear the parts, you bring the parts in. Where does each part lead and transition throughout the sections, right? Then what are the instruments or what are the parts that should take focus during that particular section, be it in a verse or a chorus, right? You also discover a lot of things, right? You discover that okay, during this part, maybe this you take a lot of mental notes as I go along, right? Okay, this section needs to be this part, right, or this element or this particular instrument needs to be the focus during this section, and vice versa. Maybe in a different section, maybe there's a guitar solo. Obviously, the lead guitar, right, the solo needs to be the focus of the section. I take all these mental notes in mind, right, write it down before even doing that, and then shape the overall mix, right? So let's just take a listen to the rough, right? In this case, the rough actually is just I just turned off the master bus processing. So we'll just go through it and just like analyze the entire song structure first of all. So it's drums, bass, guitars, right, vocals. Pretty straightforward, right? You have clean, you got some overdriven guitars, and you got the heavily distorted, right? The really saturated guitars as well, and you have a little bit of strings and a little bit of a piano line around coming towards the back of the song as well. There's some other interesting parts, right? There's also a bass synth, and I'll explain that a little while later as well. That really makes that's something cool that I added later on. So let's take a listen to the rough mix of Pain. Okay, so here we go. Intro. Straight away, vocal comes in with the overdriven guitar, slightly dirty the guitars. Feedback. Straight away, right? The full band comes in. This is I would consider this a chorus because that's the hook, right? The song title. Really cool. And then it drops into verse. Right? Verse just has clean guitars and a vocal. So you see, dynamics, right? We built from huge, big, massive, right, to a quiet, kind of a very, very reflective, very, very mellow, melancholic kind of a verse. And right builds up into another sort of like chorus, another chorus, second chorus section. Similar guitar chord, right? Same chord progression, same groove. But the melody is a little different. But thematically, you know, this section functions like a chorus. And then right after that, we go into another dynamic drop down, right? Alright, okay. So I would say this is like a second verse, right? I will classify it as that. There's a little cool break here. Yeah. So you can see there are a lot of actually songwriting and dynamic tools that are employed before any mixing is done. So this is like a bridge slash solo. The strings actually start coming in here, giving that epic sense. Anytime you have strings, it makes it epic and big. And the guitars go away, leaving just piano. Really, really cool drop in terms of dynamics, actually. And then, close off, big finale. Change in the drum pattern, right? From a kick, kick, snare, now it becomes a snare, kick, and awesome, right? So there we go. So that is, right, putting up a rough mix gives you the overall discovery, right? Okay, I know the section, I know how the song should build up dynamically, and obviously, right, I know where the different parts come in lah. So let's take a look now into a more detailed breakdown, okay, of, right, the separate elements. So where do we start? We start, of course, right, with where the rhythm section starts lah, okay? We start with the drums. Okay, let me just mute all of these. Let's mute the vocals. And let's just leave the drums here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So the drums here are actually programmed, right? Programmed drums. And it's cool, right? A lot of music, a lot of modern stuff actually, right, relies on programmed drums anyway, right? But what we use here would be the Steven Slate digital SSD 5, right? They're awesome. I love Steven Slate products, especially their drum library, their plugins, and everything, right? But SSD is one of the industry standard products when it comes to drums. So, right. So these are SSD 5 drums, really, really cool, right? And let's just break it down into, there's a kick, snare. There's actually two snares, actually. Snare VP, right? I like to highlight this one, the VP. We'll go through it a little bit after this lah. So let's take a look first of all through the drums, all right? Okay, actually, let me turn on actually the Master Bus plugins first. You can't see this because this is on a different screen, but you know, just letting you know. Music's going to sound a little louder now, but you're right, we're still going to keep that in perspective lah. Okay, so let's turn it on. These are just the drums alone. Okay, right, it's got that tight reverb on it as well. There we go. So that's the drums. Okay, so let's take a look in the, at the kick drum first of all. Now I would want to start off by saying that one of the things that I like to do, right, in my approach to mixing, is to, okay, I actually probably have to show you in another track. I'm going to pull up this bass. No, maybe not the bass track. Let's pull up this one. Let me find another track. Okay, maybe just this one, the BV. Okay, right. Let me show you. Right. So one of the things that working now in, I mean, it's obviously now we are in the digital realm. We are in a digital environment. We work inside a digital audio workstation in a DAW, right? Music is being distributed digitally also. So naturally, that's where computers come in. So that is the format and the medium that we work with nowadays. But the sound of a lot of the classic records, of our favorite records, the best selling records that we all know and we all love, a lot of them were and are still actually being mixed on large format analog consoles. So how do we, working inside the computer, inside the digital realm, inject a little bit of that analog, right, flavor, analog vibe, so to speak, into our mixes? So, right, a very common technique and something that I employ almost on probably like 90% of my mixes is to use, right, tape and console emulation plugins. I'll run you through what it is. So, right, on almost every channel and every track, okay, right, the very, very first instance of what I would put on the plugin is virtual tape machines. The idea behind this is you're trying to recreate the signal flow as if, right, something was recorded on analog tape and then running through an analog console, right? You see this throughout the entire process. Okay, so Slate Digital were one of the many companies, right, that produce these kind of plugins, but I really, really like, right, Slate Digital. Shout out to Slate Digital. Okay, so the first one, right, is virtual tape machines. So this emulates, right, the signal path as if the instrument is recorded on analog tape. In this case, right, we are talking about the type of tape, which is the FG456, which is like a Quan G456, right? Speed wise as well is 30, right, IPS. Okay, bear in mind this is actually on the backing vocal channel, okay? But for drums, usually, right, I would actually go with 15 IPS, right, 2-inch 16 track, and FG456 lah, okay, right, correct, because this gives a slightly warmer sound to it. I like to do that for drums. So this is the first thing that's right on the insert, all right, of the first plugin that's in the insert. Now this is followed up by virtual mix rack, okay, which contains, okay, all right, I'm actually gonna mute this first, all right, please ignore this plugin, okay, right. So it actually contains two, right? Ignore this one, the FG stress, ignore this. So it will contain two plugins here. First one, this is called virtual channel. So what is virtual channel? Virtual channel is an emulation of, right, a channel of an analog console, right? So it emulates and models the characteristics, right? The frequency response, right, of as if you are running this through a channel of an analog console, and you have selections of, right, the some of the most well loved and well respected, right, consoles that people mix on, that people work on. Now you have the SSLs, right, you have the APIs, you have the Neves, you have the Tridents, you have the RC Tube. Now in this case, right, I tend to gravitate nowadays to the Brit 4K, which is the SSL 4000G. So pretty much all my projects now I kind of gravitate and I use this setting. So this is virtual channel. Now the next thing that follows up right after that, this is FG73. So what is FG73? FG73 is a preamp. It's a mic preamp, right? This is an emulation of the Neve 1073. So, right, going after virtual channel, right, it immediately goes into the preamp section of the FG73. So cycling back again. So this is what how, right, the most basic and simple approach of how you mixers would usually employ, right, tape and also console emulation. Start with a, right, tape tape plugin, right, in this case virtual tape machines, and then go over to, right, virtual channel, a channel of an analog console, then going to the preamp of a Neve 1073. Of course, right, there are other modules as well that you can mix and match, different sort of preamps. So that's where we discover and find what it is. But this is what I use most of the time. Okay, so let's cycle back to the kick. Now, in this case, you don't really see the tape, and I'm just going to point it out first. For drums, you don't see it there, right? Because I've really actually inserted those when I was bouncing these bouncing the drum tracks down to audio, because before this is actually MIDI, as I said, it's programmed drums. So when I exported it, I actually inserted the tape and the console emulation plugins right on the output, so that when it's outputted through that. So you are already hearing the product of how it is going through virtual tape machine and virtual mix rack with the virtual channel and the 1073 preamp. So let's take a look at, first of all, the kick. Right, so the selection of this kick, this is kick 5 NRG. It's just one of the sample names. Okay, so it's your I like this kick very much, right? Because it's that very very metal kick lah, right? So it's the right kick for this genre. So we're gonna just listen to this kick in solo, and one of the things I do, all right, is just a little high pass at 20, just to shave off some of the extremely low frequency. I just make it a habit, right, to most of the time to just have a little high pass at 20 here. And let's take a look at what else did we have. Okay, so here is a cut. Okay, number 2. This is a cut at about 89.9 hertz. You say effectively that's about 90 hertz. So 90 hertz is actually a good point, because that's kind of where the bass is actually centered. So this little cut here actually, is just to cover a little space, a little bit of room for the bass guitar. Okay, so likewise, moving on, there is another here as well at 120. So at 120, this would probably be one of the upper harmonics, right, of the kick drum. So again, 120 hertz. This is where I'm just giving space for the bass guitar, right? This little realm, right? This little frequency range here is to give way so that the kick and the bass will not clash with each other. So a couple of other things as well, right? I do have this plugin here. This is the API 550A, and all it's doing is just a little tiny low shelf boost at 50 hertz, just to give it that extra weight lah. Okay, that's all. Nothing complicated. API EQs, right? Bob Olson, the very very shout out to Bob Olson, a very very famous, well-known engineer from the Motown days, and even a mastering engineer as well. He says the API, he really turned me into the API EQs, right? Because he says that with API it's really simple. It either makes things sound better or it makes it sound worse. Right, so it's super easy to use, right? And I love APIs. You see a lot of API EQs all over the place later on. So that's what it does. Now, I don't use a lot of compression on the individual close mic drums. Actually, I'm not a fan of too much compression, even if it's live drums. Now, especially so since these are programmed drums, right? Immediately when you program it, you already are able to manipulate and play with the dynamics, right, with the velocities, so that it's going to be very very consistent. Okay, believe me, the programming of drums is very important, right? The MIDI velocities are not like static 127 all the way. There is some velocities that are already drawn into are programmed into it, so that, for example, you have your grace notes that are before the downbeat. Very often, if a real drummer plays it, it's always quite noticeably softer than actually when you actually hit down on the downbeat, right? So you see there are accents on the downbeats, right? And those that are in between, all those upbeats, the 16 notes anticipations before that, those are all dynamically a little bit softer, just like a real drummer will do, right? So that's really, really key when you are programming MIDI drums and you are working with MIDI drums. You got to program it as if like a real drummer is playing, right? If you want to make it sound convincing, right? Otherwise, if you want to sound like a machine, then then by all means, if the style of music warrants it, then go for it. Okay, go for it. Just set your MIDI 127 all the way, right? But in this case, we do play with the velocities because we want him to give the impression that it's played by a drummer. Now, having said that, okay, now I don't use compression. And furthermore, this is a very, very consistently programmed kick drum. What I do use, right, on kick snare and some of the more percussive stuff is I will use a clipper, right? So this is actually the Boss little clipper, really, really nifty, super simple. I like the sound of it because depending on how aggressive it goes, it's pretty transparent. I actually do like the sound of this clipper, right? So what it does is this is only just going to tame the very, very tops of the peaks of the transients of the kick drum. Okay, so let's play this and see what it does. Okay, right, there you go. See, and also only on the loudest hits does it come in. Right. So some of the softer hits, it lets it go. It doesn't touch it at all, right? So that's what the clipper is doing. So it's meant to be transparent. I don't want this to have clearly have some sort of a dynamic or a compression to it, okay? Because again, it's already programmed. It's already natural sounding already. Why do I need to? It's already sounding good. Why do I need to add additional compression to it and just alter to something that already sounds good, right? This is just to make sure that, later downstream, right, the drum compressor, right, shall show you later as well, and also the stereo master bus compressor won't be forced to work too hard. Okay, so we try to even out a little bit, just to massage things a little bit, keep things a little bit controlled, keep things a little bit tight, so that it doesn't force, right, the stereo master bus compressor to work over time now. So that's pretty much it. Okay, let's move on to snare drum. So snare drum, there's actually two different samples, and this is the beauty again of maybe using program drums, but you can actually employ that when you use live as well. You can always layer different samples, right? And mix and match the best of both characteristics of one and mix it with the characteristics of another to give you the ultimate snare sound. So it's actually two different snares. One is snare 15. Let's solo this and see. Okay, so you can hear this is kind of like slightly more higher tune, right? This is to kind of give it the bite and the articulation. And immediately you will immediately see, I'm going to contrast this with the other snare. This is the VP, which is actually the Vinnie Paul signature, aka the Paramore snare, right? And this is really, really famous, right? As when Paramore came out, every band wanted to have their snare sound like them, okay? So this is the actual sample, right, of the Vinnie Paul snare, right? So, okay. I should probably turn off the reverb first so that you're not gonna hear too much reverb. Okay, let's turn it off. Hear it dry, okay? There you go. Fat, lot of low end. I think it's actually a 14/8 if I'm not mistaken. It's like a 14" by 8. It's a really deep snare drum. So the combination of these two, right? One, it's the slightly higher tune, right, with a lot of the attack and a lot of the articulation, and the other one, and the Vinnie Paul, which gives you the weight, the size, and also that sustain, that ring. So we're blending the two snares together to give you the right to create the snare, all right. There we go. All right. So that's two of them. Predominantly, you are actually hearing the. Okay, let me just bring up the. Where's the lower zone? Okay, and how do I change this? See, this is what I mean. I have not done this in a while, so where is the mixer? Hello. Dun, 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 dun. Transport bar, lower zone. Okay, I'm not finding the. How do we do this already? Yeah. See, that's the thing of not doing the live streams for a while. I forget how to do this. Okay, how do I change this into the mixer? Come on, man. Da, da, da. Window layout. No. Do we change it? Mixer. Hello. Oh, it's right there. Okay. Anyway, all right. So this is hopefully that y'all can see it. So all right. So the snare Vinnie Paul is just marginally slightly higher, slightly louder, right? And let's see, what do we have here? Now, the Vinnie Paul, I think we've treated it with. Let's take a look at what I have here. So this one is the Vinnie Paul is actually the one that's pretty much the meat and the whole substance of the snare, like the main snare sound. We're going for the big fat, deep tuned snare. So there is a little bit of EQ on this. Okay, let's go through what the EQ is again. So 200 hertz. There is a boost at about 200 hertz. Okay, that is usually where the fundamental of snare drums are. It's centered around 200 hertz. 2 dB, right? Just a 2 dB boost there. And here this would be a cut about 220, just a little bit to, because you see the fundamental is at 200, but very close to it you have a bit of harmonics. So this one here, right, just at 220, right, there's a little bit of a cut here, two and a half, about 2.6 dB, just to notch out a little bit of that, right? Some of the harmonics, right? The low mid harmonics that we do not want. Okay, and then a little bit of boost at, this is at 4.6, 4.7K, just to give it a bit of a bite. All right, let's just listen to it before and after. There you go. Right, and a little bit of high end here. Right, the high end here is at 7.5K onwards. So now I did say that I usually don't compress the snares, but actually in this case I actually do. Let's just, right, and this is using the U73B, right, module. Okay, so let's bypass this. Okay, so the reason why I wanted this, right, is because I really wanted to draw out that sustain, right, of this of the snare. The Vinnie Paul, this snare sample already has a decent sustain, but I really wanted to enhance it a little bit more. Firstly, because of the tempo of the song, right? So you mean the tempo of the song goes like this, right? So let's play with the kick. So the snare is really hitting down on the backbeat, right? Right, on the backbeat. But we really wanted to give it a bit of size, right? We have to increase. I wanted to increase the sustain. So this is what this does, right? The release is fairly fast, right? Fairly fast, and compression is about halfway. So bypass without. See, the sustain is a lot shorter, and now, yeah. So okay, I topped this off with a little bit more EQ. I think I added this FGA, which is also, this is Slate Digital's version of the API 550 EQ, right? Added this after the fact because I decided that oh, looks like we need a little more 200 hertz, a little bit more of that fundamental, that bottom, right, the beefy punch of the snare drum, and also again a little bit more, okay, of 5K, significantly more actually, about 4 dB plus, right, at 5K. So if we bypass everything, let's listen to her drums. It's very dull, okay. dark, and then with this, yeah, see, it's bright, it's got that bite, it's got that snap to it, and also as importantly, it's got a sustain. This kick and snare. Okay, let's bring in the rest of the drum kit. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. It's just a ride cymbal here, right? Ride cymbal, right? I pretty much tend to high pass, right? The ride cymbal pretty high, 750. A little bit of a cut here at about 783, right? A significant cut, okay, just to get a little bit of the ring out. Let's listen to the right. Yeah, there we go. It's a ride cymbal. And this will be the overheads. Okay, right. So in the case of the overheads, there's about 90 hertz high pass filter, pretty standard, and just a little bit of a cut at 410 hertz, a little bit of a cut at 320. Mostly, little cuts here and there just to, notch out some of the weird resonances, lah. Right. So that's will be the overheads, and the room. So the room, okay. Room is really where it gets a little bit interesting. Let's just solo the room first of all. All right, let's listen to it. Okay, so this is just the room sample that comes with the SSD5. Okay, the room mics lah. All right, that's used. So typical, but we want to really take advantage of this room and to just turn up the level of the energy for this room up to 10. Okay, right? We're gonna turn it up to 10. And one of the favorite ways that I like to do it is to use something like 1176 compressor style, right? And really smash, right, the room, right, the drum room. So, right, this is pulsar smasher. This emulates, right, the all buttons in of the 1176. So before, okay, and let's listen to what it sounds after. Okay, it's going to be distorted. It's going to be once it's run through this pulsar, it's going to be distorted. All the room ambience, all the small low level detail, all is all going to come up, essentially really squeezing the energy out of it lah. Okay, all right, there we go. So this is with nasty, it's dirty, distorted, right? Let's bypass. Okay. This is your normal regular. See, especially when you hear the toms, right? It's got that nasty, dirty, distorted sound to it. There we go, right? So this is one of the most useful things, just to add a little bit of energy and excitement in any sort of mix. It's not only something you can use for drums, it's very useful as well with bass, with vocals and all that. Sometimes you just want to add a hint of like excitement, a bit of energy, just mix in with a little bit, right? Do a parallel, right? And just mix in with a little bit of like distortion to it, okay? Which one of the common tools. Okay, let's take a look at maybe the toms. Let's look at the toms. So the samples that's being used here, we actually used like Pearl Masters, right? Tom 12, 16, and an 18-inch tom, right? So we really went for the big size toms in this case, okay? We don't really use the 18 inches that much, 16s normally. So right, pretty straightforward, nothing out of the ordinary. Hello. That's quite a blast. That's because of the reverb as well. Maybe let's listen to it without the reverb. Let me take the reverb off, okay, so you can just listen to it dry. There we go. All right, I really love these toms. You see, the Pro Masters one, really big, really fat. Now, some of the things with toms are that they are all being bussed to a group. Let's look at some of the EQ, right? Again, because these are samples that's come from a drum VST. There's really minimal EQ that's needed, right? So just a little notch out here at about 380 hertz, high pass filter at about 50, right? Then for the second tom, the 16-inch tom, half pass filter at 26, a couple of notches here and there, right? 237, 400 hertz, 950 hertz, right? Just to get some of the honkiness out. And down with the 18-inch, right? The big floor tom, you right? Just a little cut here at 200, and that's it. That's pretty much it, right? So let's listen to the toms once again. Now, one of the things is that with toms, you don't really need all the top ends. So very typically, when I bus, the toms are all bus to a group, I typically will just low pass everything at 10K lah. So this is quite in solo. When you listen to the toms, it sounds like an insane amount of reverb. But again, context matters lah. Right? In the mix, in the context of the entire mix, with everything playing, right? It's the appropriate amount. Right? Same goes with the snare earlier. It sounds like it's a lot of reverb, but again, in context, when everything's playing, it's just right. Okay. See, it's explosive almost. Okay. All right. So let's listen again to the drums. All right, all of it. All right. All right. Okay. So there's nothing much more to really look at. It's just this section in that second verse. There's hi-hat. Very simple, straightforward. Okay. So maybe let's touch a little bit into the overheads. Okay. So looking here, right, the way I've set up my mix template, right, my project, is that the overheads still go to this group. Maybe I'll just show you this little thing that I do here. Right, this is actually AUSYS, the E2 de-esser. So de-essers are not only useful for just de-essing vocals, right? A de-esser is essentially a frequency-specific compressor. So if you can tune and you can adjust and you can dial in the particular range of frequencies that you want the de-esser to act on, you can actually explore. It can be used in so many things, right? I usually actually don't use this on vocals. I usually use this, right, in this case, it's on the overhead channel, because what this does is that this will just massage, right? It will just tuck in the extreme high end, right? Especially when the cymbals crash. So let's take a look at maybe this section. Right, even the hi-hat actually just takes the edge off. Okay. Right, yeah. See when it's crashing? And it's not doing more than like 1.5 dB. So very subtle. It's not doing a lot. It's just doing not more than 1.5 dB of just gain, of reduction, right? And it's very gradual, everything from 1K above. So it's just gently tucking it down. So, those high frequencies are not going to be like, piercing and ice picking into your ears, just to smoothen out that top end. Very common thing that I use as well. So, all right, last thing about the drums, let's take a look at the drum group. So I mentioned that I don't use a lot of compression on the individual drum tracks itself, but I do use the drum bus compression. And what I use, right, is my absolute favorite on drums, okay, is the API 2500. Okay, I love this one. One day I hope that I can get afford the actual hardware unit. Okay, all right. So what this plays around with, right, is usually the one I will play around is usually the threshold and the attack. So let's pay attention. I'll just play the drums, all right, and let's pay attention to what happens when I mess around with the attack. All right, listen to the snare drum especially. So, all right, so this is where we had originally. So this is at 1 millisecond attack. Okay, let's bring it down. Okay, see what happens to the snare? It'll be more obvious once I get down to the quicker attack time. Yeah, let's maybe I'll just loop the verse part with the hi-hat, kick snare hi-hat, so it's easier to hear. Right? Listen to the snare by going to 1 millisecond. Right. So the difference between these two, this is where I usually play around with it. I would start it at about the fastest attack. Actually, I'll start it at that, and quite often that setting's really really nice. It's really, really cool. It works really really great. But sometimes I may feel that throughout the mix later on, when again, when in context with the drums, with the guitars, with the vocals and everything, sometimes I feel that, right, I need to let that transient of the snare kind of like poke through a little bit. So this is where I was usually back off and play off with the attack. So now, if I want something that's a little bit more tight and aggressive, I would go to like 0.03, which is the fastest, the initial setting that I usually go for. But eventually, I found that I needed to let that snare, the transients, come through a little bit more, so I pulled it back to 1 millisecond. Lah. You got to play around with this from time to time. Mixing is, there's a saying that goes, right? Set and don't forget, right? Because very often we're accustomed in our modern life to set and forget. That's the phrase we like to say. But in mixing, you can't do that. You have to, right, employ what we call set and don't forget. You set a certain setting, right, whatever the plugin setting is, a compression setting, a reverb setting, whatever. But don't forget what you did, because later you may always need to go back to it and maybe tweak it, right, appropriately once the entire mix, right, once you dive further deeper into the mix process. So, right, it very much probably I started out with 0.03, then I gradually, when I wanted to let that snare come through a little bit more, I just backed off on that attack until I got it to where I like it to be. Usually I never go more than 1 millisecond. So, it's between this range over here. Okay, so that's the drums. Now let's move on to the bass. Bass, the final frontier. Okay, it's a really old musician's joke. Okay, apologize for it. Okay, so let's listen to the bass first of all. So the bass was the bass is a live bass. The bass and guitars are here are all real. They're all live basses. Okay, so let's listen to it. So this was actually recorded with my Yamaha BB, right? The BB2004. Awesome bass. I loved it. They don't make it anymore. It's a neck true model. All right. It's really it's one of the older models that they don't make anymore. So let's take a look at the bass track. Okay. So same thing as I showed you earlier, right? The virtual tape machines, virtual mix rack with the virtual channel with the FG73. But here, right, because we recorded I actually ran this through the MPEG B15, right, the Portaflex. Okay, so this is really really cool. It has the reputation of being like the most widely recorded bass amp in the world. Okay, right. And man, I would love to get my hand on a reissue, right? So, but it's really cool. The plugin will have to do, and the plugin's a really really good emulation anyway. So let me just bypass this and let's listen to maybe the bass, which is just clean, right? Clean, pure DI. So cool, nice. It's actually pretty nice, right? Right, but sometimes for a little bit of that character and maybe a little bit more grit, that's where the amp sim actually comes into play. So let's turn, right, the amp sim, the MPEG B15, turn on. Okay, you can hear especially that grind, right? That around that 1K, 1.2K kind of a grind, that growl, growl actually is the right word, okay? So that's what happens. Let's bypass again. So this is just clean, nice, fat, right? But just a little bit boring, not really matching with the energy of the rest of the track. So, right, that's where an amp sim really comes in. Just give it a bit more drive there. Okay, so the bass, right? This is the bass channel. I actually bust this over to a bass group here, where actually a lot of the processing actually takes place. And I'll just walk you through what I've used in here lah. Okay, so here, right, the very first thing that's instantiated here on this bass group, right, it looks like a lot of plugins, but let me just walk through you one by one. First thing I have here, this is actually the Waves C4 multiband compressor, right? So what this does here, right, is that I only actually have the low band active, only this band active. So everything from from 180 hertz and below, and all of the other bands, these are all bypassed, so they're not active. What the Wave C4 here is doing is that it's actually just compressing, right? And again, the word massaging, okay, maybe back of my head, I need a massage, man. Why I keep mentioning the word massage, right? It's just there to massage the real bottom end of it, right? So this is really helpful, right? I find it really helpful, and it's a technique which I have to admit I stole this from Warren Hewitt, okay? Right? Of Produce Like a Pro. And I did this because what this does is that it will actually, right, it will actually not cause the compressors later on, which I'll show you after this. It won't force the compressors later down the line to work too hard because of all that, bass and low frequency energy that's there. So this just kind of controls it, right, so that it's not going to have a wild effect on the compressors later on, right, so that I can, right, really manipulate the rest of the compressors for tone lah. So this is the C4, right? So this is what it does, and then it goes into this plugin called the Surfer EQ2 Boogie, right? It's called the Boogie version because this is a light version by Sound Radix and Focusrite. Right, they sort of collaborated on this. Now, this is a very cool plugin. It's one of those smart, intelligent plugins. What this does, right, and I'll show you. You'll see in action is that this green control over here, these green parameters over here, right, the one you can see over here. This is what we call the surfing band, the surfer band, hence the name Surfer EQ. And what this does is that pay attention to what this does. Okay, right, so. Okay, when I play the audio, when I play bass, F sharp, it tracks the frequency, tracks the notes. D, da 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 da, E, F sharp, right? Okay, so this is actually a very, very useful and a powerful tool for a couple of reasons. So for example, if I wanted to do, I could always set a boost so that every time it's playing that particular note, it is being reinforced. Okay, I can always apply a boost to it. But that is like the simple way of utilizing it, right? So in vocals especially, it's actually pretty useful. So if you dial it in so that it will always sort of push the vocal forward, right, without causing any of the other frequencies, right? That's basically what it does lah. But you can also tweak in this case, right? This control here that's right in the middle, I don't know whether you can see it, right? The user interface is really small. Here is where you can actually adjust that frequency, right, of where the Surfer EQ is tracking in multiples in the harmonics. So you can go from if you leave it at 1, the value of 1.0, right? This is 46 hertz. That's the fundamental note lah. F sharp, okay? That F sharp 1, that low F sharp. So if you go to 2, this is the octave above, 46, right? 0.5 times 2, it gives you 93 hertz, right? So this is an octave higher. You see, you can get where this can play around with. You know what? You can play around. Then we go to the this would be second harmonic. Okay, correct. Second harmonic, right? Second harmonic would be actually the 5th that's above, right? Yeah, so F sharp, right? And up would be C sharp, right? So this is actually the 5th, okay? Harmonic series, go ahead, research and see what it is. So on and so forth. Second harmonic, third harmonic will be here, 185, okay? This is 2 octaves higher than the F sharp, okay? And then the interesting, as we go higher and higher in the harmonic series, let's go to the fifth harmonic, fourth. Okay, it's very confusing, okay, because you have the root, right, and then you have first, second, third, fourth harmonic, okay. This fourth harmonic here, 232 hertz. Now this note is actually really interesting because this note is actually, right, bear in mind, okay, this is F sharp, okay, ding, 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 that's the key that we're in. So this note at 232 hertz, this is actually the um, two octaves up and a major third. Okay, so essentially that's actually an A sharp there. Now this is actually a minor key. So having an A sharp harmonic somewhere up there is going to. It is not to say it's wrong. It in nature it happens. It's perfectly there. But what I use this to do is that, right, I've set the surfer EQ to target this harmonic, and I employ a cut. So what this does is that this actually cuts out that third, right? Which in the case of when the chord is actually in F sharp minor, you don't want that harmonic third there to be implying that there's a little bit of major there. So this actually helps to reinforce, right, the, if I were to say, the minor characteristic, the minorness, right, of, right, the sound. So this helps to clarify also the root note, the F sharp. So this is a very useful tool, and watch it in action. Okay, this is going to cycle all, and it's going to track across every single note, right? Okay, F sharp, right? You can actually see here the note, right, and then this is actually the F sharp note. Yep. So on every note, it's taking out that fourth harmonic. It's clarifying the fundamental note. It's making it a little bit more clearer, a little bit more defined. All right. So that's what it does. Very cool plugin. All right. So next one I have here is, hey, another 1176. This is the revision A, which is the blue stripe. So what this does, right, is pretty much, I love this for bass, okay? Right? So, fairly aggressive. I am really crushing and squashing this out. But this is actually used more for the tone. Because bear in mind, again, right, the Wave C4 is already taking care of a lot of the bottom end, right? This one is it's not reacting to that low frequency anymore. It's actually reacting to the overall content of the of the bass, right? So I use this more of imparting the tone and getting and squeezing out more energy out of it. It's not for level control anymore at this stage, okay? It's especially for the low bottom end. I mean, there is level control obviously, right? But it's not so with the Wave C4 earlier on, right? It is not going to be so wildly not as wild, okay, as if I did not had that early on. So that's 1176. Let's move on. Next thing. Okay. So the next thing is that I have on my bass processing is Bass Rider. Another one of these very very cool and awesome plugins, right, from Waves. What this essentially does, right, is that it will track and you will trace the level, all right, and I've set it to be very very gentle so that it, again, just to keep the levels even. So everyone's doing a little bit, right, to sort of help to contain that, to control the levels, right? So it just rides it. You can look at it. That's how it works in action. Okay, let's go on to the next plugin, right? It's pretty straightforward, right? Later on in vocals, you see it has vocal rider as well. Now the next one that I have here is MV2, and boy oh boy, MV2 is really one of my favorite plugins. I would say this is like probably one of the top three, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful in its simplicity. All it does, right, is three different controls. You have your low level compression, right? You have your high level compression, which is the way it's named. High level just means like your regular compression, and you just have an output slider here just to compensate, right? Compensate for the volume gain when you bring all of these, when you adjust all these parameters. So the real magic actually takes place in this low level compression slider here, because what it does, okay, is that it's a combination of like expansion, parallel processing, and upwards compression, right? So it's doing something under the hood, which, you know, I can't really explain what it does, because we're never actually given a glance of what it is. But to achieve something similar to this, you need a quite a fairly complicated, right? Oh, hang on a second. Right, you need a fairly complicated signal path, right? You need like to parallel, the bass, you need to split the parallel into different buses, and you need to blend it in. MV2 seems to do that, and all in one simple unit lah. Okay, so that's pretty much what it does. Now let's cycle through here. Decapitator. Am I using Decapitator in this case? Let me just take a look at some of the automation. Okay. No, actually, I'm not using it. So in this case, Decapitator is actually not used. I think I was actually experimenting with the plugins. Let me maybe. Yep, it's turned off, so it is bypass. Okay, but it's a cool plugin to have. I think I was playing one with a chorus as well. Was the chorus used? Nope, it's already been bypassed. Okay, so I do have one thing here. This is R bass, Renaissance bass. So again, it's a great plugin if you want to, right? This really helps. For example, if you want to check and see if the bass, right, is being audible on smaller speakers lah. This really helps because it brings out some of the harmonics, right? Be very careful with R bass though. It can easily be overdone and overcooked. Okay, so right, so that's what R bass is for. Let's listen to it. All right, let's bypass. Right, so it really adds that fatness. Boom. Right, adds that fatness to the sound. Okay, really cool. Right. Now, there's one thing that I would probably want to sort of show you. Okay, one thing that I do with the bass is a little bit of automation. Okay, so let's take a look at, all right, this automation line here. So one of the cool things that you can do with dynamic wise, right, is that, okay, let's talk about mixing. So one of the things that we want to do is that we want to always draw the listener in, right, to the entire song from the start until the finish. And one of the easiest ways that you do that is by dynamics, right? You have contrast between the different sections. We really heard that earlier when we were listening to the rough mix. You see, each of the sections have a different contrast to it that pulls the listener in. Whenever the impact of the choruses come in, that's where you feel it. It's when the verses are down, a little bit more mellow, melancholic, right? It puts you a little bit at slightly at ease. It builds attention, and then, right, it comes in. So arrangement is one of the factors. Mixing is one of the factors, right? Putting parts, right? Adding parts is one of the factors. But very often when we add parts on top, we maybe add a high layer of guitars or something like that, right? The drummer moves on to a crash. These are the things. But these typically occupy towards the higher frequency range of stuff. Oftentimes then the bass, the low end, is neglected whenever we talk about this sort of dynamic build-up. So in order not to do that, it's a trick that I've learned and I really employed. So every time, right, the chorus parts of any song, and I employ this on, and I use this on and other songs as well, okay, what will happen is that, okay, let's look at this automation point here, yeah? Okay, let's zoom in to this automation point, right, with the bass. Okay, right. Ah man, I wish I had a bigger screen. Okay, so this is coming from the verse, right, into the chorus, okay? And take a look at the, here we go. Right, so pay attention to this low shaft filter over here. So coming in from the verse. So this is still the verse. And then when the bridge, right, chorus, solo section kicks in. Now, it's very subtle, and you can probably only hear it if you really have really good headphones that got good low extension. But basically, it's just a 1 dB, right, shelf at 100 hertz below, a very very gentle shelf. So whenever the music kicks into the bigger parts like the chorus, not only do you lift all the high frequencies, we are also lifting that low, the bottom frequency as well, right? So very very subtle thing. It adds that weight, it adds a little bit of energy without it sounding being obvious like somebody when it turned up the bass. So this is one of the things that one of the tricks and techniques. I'll show it again. See what happens here. Okay, pay attention. Right, coming in from the verse. Okay, pay attention, and then when everything comes in, just adds a little bit of that weight down at the bottom. Just adds a little bit of additional weight, right? So this is something that you can always employ in your mixes, okay? One of the oldest tricks in the book. Okay, let's move on. Bass is done. Let's go to... Okay, I'm going to skip some of the things first, all right? And let's go to some of the guitars. So the guitars here, these crunch guitars, all right. Okay, let's go into this group. So the crunch guitars were already recorded by Afik back at home, right? He actually recorded back. So very simple, same tape and console emulation. Nothing much, really, nothing much. Just high pass, right, low pass to like shave off all the bright top frequencies, 3.5K, just a little tiny cut here at about 540 hertz ish or so, all right? So very simple. So this is, yeah, so if you listen to what this frequency is that little humming note there. So that helps to just eliminate that. Right? That's it. No unusual EQ. Sounds great already. Nothing needs to be done. Just balanced in. Okay? So let's see. Right. Yeah, that's it. It's really, really that simple. Okay, let's move on to the actual rhythm guitars itself. Okay, so this was very cool. I think what we did on this was we actually triple tracked the guitars. Okay, there's a left, there's a center, the right. So we used the Laney VH100R, which it's a really awesome amp. I really really love it. It's so super underrated. It's like a Marshall except better. Okay, it's like a Marshall on steroids, lah. Okay, so I think we employed 3 different guitars for each part, if I'm not mistaken. So 3 different guitars. I think I don't remember which ones they are. There was the Charvel, which was like a Tele sort of a model. There was a Music Man, and one more, was it the Schecter? I can't remember, lah. So maybe you can chime in in the chat and remind me which one it is. So right, the amps are all mic'd with 2 different mics, right? One here. Let's take for example this set, okay? This one that says distortion 160L. So 160 here is the Bayer Dynamic 160. That is a ribbon microphone. I absolutely love this microphone on guitar amps. Really, really love this microphone. And the other mic here is the 650, right? That's the ATM, Audio Technica ATM 650. So that is a dynamic, kind of like the equivalent of the SM57, but again better. All right. So these 2 combination of mics I've been using these 2 is pretty much I've used this combination a lot of times, lah, right? So it's the classic combination of taking that SM57 and the ribbon mic, but in this case, right, I use actually the ATM 650, lah, right? So that's the classic combination between these 2. So right? Let's just solo all the distortion guitars, right? And let's listen to how it sounds. This is a super saturated high gain sound that we went for. It was appropriate for this song. Super, super saturated. Okay, right? Super, super saturated. That's really, really high gain, okay? And another thing that we did is that, and I do encourage is that when we recorded the guitars, first of all, we mic'd up the amps, but we also actually employed and used a DI. Okay, in this case, we use a radial DI. That actually comes the first thing. For with the radial DI, right, the through from the output from the DI actually goes out to the amps, but we also record a clean DI signal as well. So the clean DI signal is very, very handy, and right, I encourage that if you record guitars, try to implement and use a DI in your recordings. Not only do they help your clean DI sound better, but it's such a useful tool, right? For example, you can always split into an actor and a different amp as well, right? So we actually have these DI tracks, and the DI tracks, right, as I mentioned, the benefit of it is that we actually ran it through some of the amp sims as well. So, hey, we don't want to be Luddites. We don't want to be traditionalists and say, tube amps only. We don't use digital modelers and all that crap. Why not we embrace the best of both worlds, right? In this case, right, the one that I really often use is actually THU by Overloud, right? So for Slate, the All Access users, right, they are given this this edition of the THU amp simulator, right, to be used as well. So, okay. Now, but the interesting thing here is, if I'm not mistaken, and looking at it, right, I think I am correct. Okay, is that the DI track here is not another super saturated high gain tone. Let's check it out. This looks like more of like a okay. Let's listen to it first. If I suspect this is actually more like a moderately slightly dirty tone. Yeah, that's it. So it's basically, I think started off with a clean, right? So this is actually a model of the Soldano 88, right? Clean without, and I added the, I think this is the Diode 250 is actually the DOD distortion. So just to give it a bit of a drive, and same goes with the right channel. Okay, same goes with this one. Yeah. Yeah. So you see, right, what we actually did here is that with the super saturated, the really high gain mic channels that we recorded, right, the DI tracks, it's no point to try and run it through another super high gain amp again, because everything's just going to be super saturated. So what this doing this and just running it through an overdriving, like a medium-ish kind of an overdrive sound, right? The purpose of this is to really bring back, to really sort of add a little bit of clarity to the chords, right? Especially to the rhythm guitar, right? Because the thing is, when you turn up everything super high gain, one of the things that you will suffer will be the note clarity, right? The clarity of whatever the chords that you're playing it, the note definition will definitely suffer. Okay, right? So adding this back in helps, right, to so that you can hear maybe the individual strums, the individual notes a little bit clearer lah. So let's maybe just take a listen to the guitars, right? Let's listen to the mic alone. Turn up the drums and bass. And then let's add in the DI. Not only adds a little bit of clarity to the note, but also adds a little bit of size as well. So you see, that's the benefit of employing the tool. All right, so there we go. Now, one of the interesting things, all right, I mean, one of the things that I also want to point out that actually there's other parts as well. There's actually this octave part that is also playing on top of this. And the thing is that very often, sometimes if you want to build a big sound, it's not necessarily about the I know some people talk about like quad tracking, quintuple tracking, sextuple tracking, and all that. Sometimes it's using the clever. Sometimes it's more about clever use and the employment of parts and different voicings. If you really want to make a sound bigger, it's often much more effective to use slightly different voicings, different tones, different characteristics, instead of just piling on layer upon layer upon layer of parts. Okay, right? Very often when you have so many tracks and you layer so many things, one of the first things that goes is firstly the note definition, right? The clarity of the chords and everything. That's one of the first things that goes away. Yes, you do get a wall of sound, but the clarity suffers lah. So doing this, let's listen to this line that was recorded, right? This is where it comes down to Afiq figuring out the appropriate guitar parts lah. This octave line. Da-da-da. Very simple. It's got a little bit of delay right to it just to give it a little bit of ambience. This was actually a part that was originally recorded. We even have the guides. We actually added the guide because the guide, the demo tracks actually sounded pretty good. Let's listen to this. This is just I actually like the sound of this. Right, and we just made it a little bit bigger by adding the mic tracks as well. So there's a left and right, and the demo guitars included in the middle. So you see, the entire guitar tone in this case is actually the amalgamation. It's the combination of the low detune, the extended range low power chords, along with this octave line part. So that's really what gives it the size. You see? So let's listen to the guitars again. And now we're gonna add the octave line. All right, that's it. Right. So the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Okay. So now let's take a look at some of the processing that's taking place in this. So same thing again, right? Virtual tape machine, virtual mix rack. Okay, instead of putting everything on all the individual channels, I actually grouped and busted. It's very useful, right? You can just treat all of them, group them into one, right? And here is BX refinement. So this is more like it's called a harshness control plugin, because what it does is that it very subtly does a little bit of it's a bit of a dynamic EQ wing, a little bit of dynamic. Um, we don't really know what happens behind because you can't really see, but you hear the effect that it smoothens out some of the harsh frequencies like around the 3-4K region, right? So this is one of the things that it does. So if I bypass this, yeah, it had a little bit of that fizziness, a little bit too much of that fizziness. So I took that out. I sort of tamed a little bit of that fizziness down. This is without, this is with. Yeah, so this really smoothens things out, okay? And I have here TDR Nova. Okay, so Nova is a fantastic plugin, one of my favorites out there. Best of all, it's free, man. Right? It's free. You can download it. Tokyo Dawn Labs are so nice to be able to allow people to use this for free, and it's super powerful. It's a dynamic EQ, right? A parallel dynamic EQ. So what we've done over here to the treatment for the guitars is that it's a high pass at 60 hertz. You don't really need all that super low bottom end, okay? And there's also the low pass at 8.3 kilohertz. So 8K above onwards, we just filter it out because coming off from a guitar amp, there's actually very little right up on this frequency, so you can afford to just shave it off lah. Okay, so the interesting thing is that I think we have two bands here, all right, of of dynamic EQ. So let's take a look, okay? Yep. Okay, so there are two bands. So this first band here, this is centered at about 220 hertz. The bandwidth is fairly wide. It's much more wider sort of bandwidth. So this is kind of just centered around that low mid, the boominess of that guitar. So let's solo this, and then you will hear what we're talking about. So I was identifying this was the range where it was making it muddy. It was muddying. This range of frequencies was not really adding and contributing to the weight and the punch of the guitars. So I employed this dynamic EQ to sort of just again massage and control it, right? Control this part. And hello, shall we play? There we go. So you can hear it's this hong, this little low mid, murky, muddy. Is that this murky range of frequencies that I wanted to just shove out a little bit? Okay, so let's take it out again. Let's see if we bypass. Yeah. So overall, also it controls the bottom end. It doesn't need to go out. It makes sure that the low end of the guitar doesn't overstep its boundary over the bass. That's one of the things as well. So the other band, let's move on. Right, the other band that's up here, this is somewhere higher. This is at about 1.9K, close to 2K. All right, so this is very typical, right? This range here, that 2K peak bite, right? That's actually the very characteristic of the Celestion V30s, because the Laney, the amp, actually runs through a 4x12 cap, which is equipped with Celestion V30s. So let's solo this band to sort of hear what I'm talking about, right? It's this range of frequencies. And again, play, come on. This one. Right, I was trying to remove that because that was that it's not the fizz is much higher. This was actually the slightly more honky nasally thing, all right, characteristic that we're trying to get rid of. Now, get rid is not the right word because it's very dangerous. 2K, 1K, 2K is very important for guitar, but because that's where a lot of that aggression, that bite comes from, that register, more towards 1K actually, right? I would think in most cases, but sometimes just a little bit too much. It pokes out a little bit, and it just happens to be the characteristic of the Celestion V30 speakers. So, just a little bit of this treatment to just, again, tame down some of the harsher peaks there. So this is without. Yeah. Very subtle, just to remove it, okay? And once again, it's some of all the parts together, okay? Let's take a look at the dirt guitars. What are the dirt guitars doing? Oh, yeah, okay, it's the same channel as I had it earlier. Line guitar, sorry, line. Okay, this is maybe where it is. The line guitars, the octave lines, right, that I was talking about earlier on, right, the higher octave parts. These are just, again, now, fairly aggressively high pass, everything above 160 hertz actually. So octave lines up here does not need, you don't need 100 hertz and below. You can, you can high pass all the way up here. So that's what we did, you see, all the way up to 160. And same goes with the low pass filter. This goes pretty way down all the way to 4.8. So because this range of frequencies, we kind of just want that that bite, right, of the definition of the octave lines. The bottom end is already taken care of by the bass. It's taken care of by the main distortion guitars. That's taking it. So it does not need to, you don't need to muddy up the whole sound a little bit more. So that's what it's doing, lah. And I mentioned earlier, and you could probably hear it. You can probably hear the delay, right? So this is Baby Come Back, right, from Baby Audio. This is just using a wide, pretty straightforward quarter note delay. So let's just listen to it and see. Yeah, so quarter note delay, just to give it a bit of space and ambience. Nothing fancy to it, right? So very, very straightforward. So again, so some of the guitars, let's just go through quickly. Right, these are the clean guitars. Okay, right. Oh, I can see now. Charvel Music Man PRS. That's right. Okay, and then yeah, and I think that's, and the Afik mentioned in the chat as well. Okay, there you go. The answer is right there, staring me right in front of me in the face. Okay, so clean guitars. So this is like a clean palm muted guitar. Let's take a look at what do I have. Nothing. There's no compression, at all. Just high pass, low pass, all right, and that's it. Super straightforward. So again, if it sounds good, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it boils down again to getting really good sound sources, lah. If it's played right, it's played consistent, played with dynamics. There's no compression on it, right? Zero, just a little bit of high passing, low passing, that's it. So this second part here, this is probably more interesting. This is like a pluck thing, I think. Yep, it is. Okay, so on this one, you can definitely hear there's effects. Let's check out what effects do I have. All right, okay. Here we go. Okay, so let's cycle through some of the stuff. All right, so this is going through. Firstly, it is again in terms of high pass, low pass, right? Same idea as I talked about. You don't need all that super low bottom end. You don't need all that super shimmery bright top end. In fact, I'm just curious and see how much of the top end did I remove. Let's bypass the filters. Yeah. Okay. Right. I also now realize why I filtered out that low. It was a little bit of the EF radio electromagnetic noise that's inside the guitars, lah. Okay. Another reason why it's a good idea to record using an actual DI box, okay, instead of just plugging it straight to the interface. The DI will be a tool that can really help solve some of these issues when you do a ground lift. But I digress. Let's go back, okay? Let's go back to that. So the first thing I have is the ADA flanger, right, from Brainworks. This is modeled after the the actual 88 flanger unit lah. So let's just listen to it on its own. What does it do? Very mild flanger, nothing fancy. So originally it's just a chorus guitar, but this one I wanted to add this just to give it a little bit of that, little bit of swirliness around. Okay. Now the next thing I have here is MV2 once again. All right. MV2 is so versatile. I like to use this on like plug stuff, anything like on guitars especially, because what it does with the low level compression, it does a couple of things. Number one, right, it increases the sustain. So when you're plucking stuff, when you're playing with any kind of a pluck stuff, the sustain really it's even, it's fat. It brings out things like the pick attack as well. So every note that's being plucked is really well defined. MV2 is like, if you can get it, right, just buy it lah. $29 lah on Waves. Okay, and then lastly, right, what I have here is the Cooper Time Cube. Okay, Cooper Time Cube is actually a delay, right? It's a digital delay, if I'm not mistaken, right? I've never actually used the actual hardware unit, but I like this on guitar stuff, right? On guitar stuff, it's really cool, right? So this is just a delay, and it's doing okay. It's interesting. It's actually has got two different delay lines going on. So one echo A is a quarter note, and another one is like an 8-note dotted. So this gives the delay a little bit of a slight ping-pongy, bouncy, back and forth kind of effect. Yeah? Once I stop it, you'll be able to hear it. Yeah. Actually, I think I have it more towards the left because this guitar is panned to the right. I wanted that delay to, right, be ping-ponging over to the left lah. Again, just to give it a bit of that space. So let's listen to the clean parts together. Very cool, right? So this part here is like just little bends. Oh no, this same thing, palm muted stuff. Again, very simple. Just high pass, low pass, no compression even. So that's it. That's it for the guitars. Okay, let's very quickly touch over to the now. Actually, no. Let's skip this first. All right. So in mixing, right, I want to share a little bit of the process as well. I mean, now generally speaking, with most music, right, I would say a really high 90-ish, 80-90% of music, really the thing that really drives and what sells a song and what the listener, what the fans tune into are the vocals, right? There's a work expression that we say vocal is king, right? And well, in this case here, vocal is queen, right? And this really spells out how important the vocal is. No matter how heavy the genre is, right, or how non-vocal centric, the vocal still needs to be present enough, not necessarily super loud and upfront like a pop record, don't get me wrong, okay, but it still needs to be present enough because the average listener always tries to engage with that. That's the human talking, or in this case singing and delivering the message, communicating the emotion. That's where the listener usually derives the emotion from, the vocal, right? I'm talking about average listeners, right, out there, the people out there who are actually ones, the fans who are going to be there to buy to buy a CD and to stream your songs, okay, right? Musicians are the ones that will focus in on the guitar, on the bass and everything, but vocals is really where the meat, the emotion really lies, okay? So now this is just a long-winded way of saying that, right? In my mixing process, right, and it's something that I do encourage, a good tip is to try to always bring in the vocal as soon as possible, as early as possible. Some some people even say that it should be the very first thing that you mix up, but I find it a little bit hard to do it that way. So I will typically always start with the main rhythm section. Get your drums, get the bass, get the main rhythm guitars, right, whatever that's holding down the chords, get all that down, and then as early as possible, as soon as possible, mix in the vocal, introduce the vocal into the whole equation, right? Because the mistake that that maybe like younger mixers will do is that they focus on the music so much, they make the track, they make the music sound so great, so full, so amazing. When it comes time to mix in the vocals, suddenly find that, oh no, there's like we've taken up all the sonic frequency and the sonic real estate, that the vocal suddenly has got no space to fit in. And then in order to make the vocal work and sit in a mix, they have to apply super aggressive EQ, super aggressive treatment, right? And basically overcooking the vocal just to make sure that it stands out, lah. So to counter that, you want your vocals to be present and everything, but you don't want to overcook and overdo things and over process it. Just bringing in the vocal as early as possible, right, helps. So that's why in this case, right, I'm skipping, things like the strings, I'm skipping the piano, because these are more like ear candy production kind of thingies that we add on, right, as basically as just additional stuff as ear candy lah. So vocals are what we want to introduce in as soon as possible. So I want to talk a little bit about the sort of the vocal approach, the vocal treatment, right, for her projects, right. So typically, what we do is we have a lead vocal, and we actually double each part, left, right. So essentially, it's a triple tracked vocal part most of the time, right? And occasionally there will be some sections here where there are additional layers. These are usually done with a different and maybe with slightly different tones, slightly with different articulations as well, right? Some sections and some words, right? There are more than three layers in this case here. You see sometimes here there's four in these cases, there's four here as well, just to get another. So some of these like an octave lower, it's performed in that way, right? All of this vocal production arrangement is all already thought out thoroughly during the tracking, during the recording sessions lah. So right, Afiq they've already put in all the work in kind of planning out how this goes. So let's take a look at let's just take a listen. Okay, here we go. All right, okay. So that is, we'll just examine this chorus for a quick one. So now, what I typically will do is a combination, right? I would split. Now, let's talk about, since we are getting into the stage of vocals. One of the things that I would usually do, okay, is and it's more of a mindset approach of how we want to treat things. But I'll take vocals here as an example because it's actually something that it's being applied for everything, for drums, for your bass, and all that. But with vocals, this is where it's a little bit easier to demonstrate. So processing, I think generally, right, can be categorized into two different categories. One is called. See, I've not done this in a while that I even forget the term. I don't know if you can remember or not. All right. So, all right. Okay. So it's divided into two. Okay, here it is. So it's divided into corrective processing, right? And the second category is called creative processing. Okay. So the thing is that what is corrective processing? Corrective processing is, right, we are applying some of the treatments. We are basically taking away all the ugly spots lah, right? Okay, in the in the makeup, in the world of makeup, the analogy in makeup is, right, you apply the foundation, okay, right? So what we're doing in corrective processing is to remove any of the ugly warts, any of the ugliness, or things that we don't want, right? Things that we do not want to highlight, we try and remove them. So typical, the things that fall into that category are things such as, right, EQ, such as the high pass filter, right? So in this case, it's like up to 120 hertz. In fact, I think in TDR Nova, there's another one. Yeah, it goes up to 130 actually. So in TDR Nova, right, we have this a little bit of honkiness at about 545, right? This is the nasal honky, and every voice has their particular range where that is apparent lah. Okay, and then at this point here, so similar approach with the guitars, right? You see, there's one point here, right, and this one here is at 4K, 4 kilohertz. This is where that's what we call the strident frequencies. So again, when a typical singer, when you hit the high notes, right, they're always going to be a little bit of that 3 4K region, which sometimes can be a little bit strident, right, a little bit harsh. So TDR Nova here just helps to smoothen that out, right? I have also smooth operator. It does some of the other things as well, right? So in addition to that, this is at about 400 hertz. So similarly, a little bit of that low mid mud, just to give a little bit of clarity to the vocals. And here again at 3.7, actually close to 4K lah, around that region, right? Just to give it out, right? So why two? Sometimes, right? Sometimes instead of having one plugin work really hard, all right, and to be really audible, sometimes running two different plugins doing the same thing in series is a lot smoother. This is something that's kind of true with with somehow with digital with digital plugins as compared to their actual hardware cousins. They somehow work better sometimes when you do subtle amounts of processing, and you lay them out in series instead of just using one EQ super aggressive lah, right? So this is something that that some engineers have their opinion. Okay, so this goes into again virtual tape machines and virtual mix rack, and you can guess the same things, but with vocals it's a little bit more to it. Okay, so there's this trimmer here just to sort of compensate and gain stage a little bit better, because right, some of the vocal parts are really are loud. So this goes to virtual channel again, but instead of the Neve, the FG73, with vocals I prefer to send it through a tube preamp. So vocals is actually one of the areas where a tube or a valve processing treatment really helps. It really flatters the vocals. Okay, right? So in this case, right, this helps to fatten the vocal up. Okay, give it a little bit more weight, a little bit more aggressiveness. Now, with the vocals, I love to use parallel processing on vocals. This is one of the areas where I really employ parallel processing. In this case, I'm using the FG Stress. So this is run at pretty much a 50-50 mix, right? So parallel processing in this case, right, without going to a long explanation, basically you split the signal into one, which is the unprocessed signal, uncompressed, unprocessed signal, and then the other one in parallel, you have a signal which is either very heavily processed, in this case compression, and then the beauty is that you mix and you blend the two together, right? The clean uncompressed signal and right, secondly the heavily compressed signal, because what this does is that it gives you a very smooth, almost sort of an invisible form of compression, right? You have the size, you have the energy, you have the density, right? The power that's coming from the compressed vocal, right? You have that density there, but you still have the uncompressed the raw, right, untreated vocal with its natural dynamics. So that's where parallel processing is really, really powerful. You can blend it in, you can make it as natural as possible, you can make it as aggressive as possible, and everywhere in between, lah. All right, the different settings just by playing with the blend of these two. And with vocals, a de-esser is always useful, all right, at this stage. So again, corrective processing at this stage, we're trying to sort of reduce and remove all the ugly warts in terms of frequency, in terms of the dynamics, right? In big wild dynamic jumps, we are trying to control it. And also in this case, right, sibilance, right? So some of the sibilance, we try to control this as well. So all of this takes place in what I call, right, corrective processing, the corrective stage. Okay, there is again one little thing I just very quickly show you. I will have this R comp here. Now this one is very subtle. It's not doing more than, actually usually not more than 1 dB, but sometimes I think some notes actually peak at 2 dB lah. But overall, this is again just to catch those loud peaks that just jump out. All right. So this is the corrective stage. Okay, now the vocals are all bussed into a group. Okay, another group here, you can see here. And this is where the creative processing comes into play. Okay, so I'll share with you a couple of things, right? There are a couple of interesting things that are happening here. Okay, let's go through them one by one. Let me just bypass this one first. Okay, so the first thing that's happening here, okay, let me turn this off. You can probably guess already there's something. First thing that's going through here, this is an 1176 once again. Right, here again, I'm using this more for tone. I'm running this through, okay, and using this more for tone, okay. Let's listen to it. Free falling, you never really left me. Okay, let's turn off some of the effects first so that we can hear things a little bit clearer. All right, so here we go. You never really left me. All right, so it's very the 1176 is grabbing it really, really nicely, right? It's bringing out some of the transients, it's bringing out some of the and naturally when you compress something heavily, things like some of the breaths, all that really, really come up because you want to get that. That's where the emotional aspect is, like all those kind of thing comes out, especially with rock music. With rock vocals, you want to really bring out all that energy out there. So again, this is again squeezing energy out of the vocal performance. TDR Nova, this is right. Okay, similar thing. This is at 3K. This is sometimes after I've made it a little bit more aggressive with the compression. Another right, a little bit of dynamic EQ at 3K. Just to, again, lightly control the strident frequencies. And another de-esser, a second de-esser. Yes, very often sometimes you find that, you need one de-esser at the early stage, and after running it through something like 11.6 like that, it not only, yes, it brings out all the energy, it brings out all the all that, but it also brings out the things like that, the S's also tends to jump out. So a second, another de-esser back here is useful. Okay, I used MV2. This is again very subtle. Again, my goal always is, especially in this case, the vocals, it's to really squeeze the energy again out, right? We want that vocal to be like, really, really powerful. So, this squeezes out a little bit more extra juice. Again, squeezing the juice. Then finally, Vocal Rider. Okay, Vocal Rider does this just to keep things level. I use this at very, very smooth, very subtle settings. I don't really use it is to be very aggressive. right? So this is kept very, very subtle. What is happening here with the API 560? Okay, graphic EQ here, post is taking out a little bit of 200, taking out a little bit of 500, and that's it. Just just a little bit of the nasal and the boxy lower mid range, and that's it. Okay, now the interesting thing here that you probably noticed, I turned it off earlier, is this. This is Meta Pitch, right? It's one of Slate's newer plugins, right? Well, I have other plugins that can do this, but this is Slate's latest offering lah. So what I've done here is I've actually added in a low octave. So let's listen to it without first. And then with, right? Right. So I've actually added a low octave part to the vocals, and this is a very, very common mixing trick and a mixing technique lah. If you want to add, add a little bit of size to vocals, right? This is one of the easiest ways that you can do. Right? Just add a pitch shifter, right? In this case, better pitch, right? Dial in something like it's an octave lower, right? And then just blend it in. Now it sounds like the low octave sounds really obvious again in solo, but in context it just makes the vocals feel like it's fatter, it's like bigger, it's a little bit more weight. It does not necessarily sound like that as low octave. Okay, so these are some of the tricks that we would usually employ lah. So maybe let's listen to it in context and then you see what I mean. Okay, very subtle. Let's turn it off first. Okay, second round, I'll turn it on. Turn on. All right. So you'll probably notice it maybe when we get into the verse. Okay, right. I actually automated it so that when you actually get to the verse, it's off. So this only happens in the choruses lah. I think it would sound a little bit weird if you have the low octave going on in the verses as well. So subtle things that you always add into, just to maximize the impact of whatever the part is. In this case here, the lead vocals. So those are all in this side, all the creative stuff. Some of the other creative stuff we're going to add on would be some of the effects. So what I love to do, right, with vocals is first thing I usually dial in is super tap. Right, so super tap is actually a delay, but it is not being employed as a delay. This is actually being used more of a room emulation. So let's solo the vocals again. So let's listen to what it does. Now, it's super subtle, all right, in this case, and it's meant to be super subtle, right? So, we record in a fairly dry live, it's a dry live room, but because of the gobo panels that we have, right? So it's a dry vocal because that's what we need to do in recording. So, but I want to introduce it to make it sound like if it's in a bigger room than it actually is. A little bit of space, a little bit of 3Dness feel. So super tap is really useful. So maybe what I do is let me just accentuate it a little bit. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Right? It sounds a little bit more obvious now, right? So this is meant to just give a space, right, to make it sound like it's inside a nice big room lah. Okay. So Now, another thing that I would add is doubler. So doubler in this case, okay, is just to give it a bit of a widening chorusing effect. Again, I will exaggerate it over here so you can hear it, because again, this is not meant to be an obvious effect. It's just there to give it a little bit of width, a little bit of space. Basically just make it better without making it sound obvious that it's been affected, you see. So here we go. Okay, let me bypass this first. I have to like disengage and re-engage the solo. Alright. Right, obviously it does make it a little louder, and we don't want that, okay? So doubling just widens it a little bit, right to the wide, similar to like a chorus effect, right? Similar to that, but that's basically what it is. Just to give it a little bit wider, give it a little bit of size, give it a little bit more dimension to it. Okay, so now we've placed it inside a room. We also want to give it a little bit of depth now, front to back depth, and one of the best ways to do it is to use delays. Okay, so there is a let's go to the verse first, because that's where it's most obvious. Right. Sorry, I gotta turn off the low octave first. So it's a mono delay. You're right. Once I stop it, you can hear that delay, right? This is an eighth note delay. It's a mono delay, so it's a front to back. It gives you the impression of front to back depth, right, of the vocal. So now when it kicks into the choruses, let's quickly go and show you. There you go. All right. One of the very common tricks that people use is, again, we talk about building up dynamics, right? I've talked about it earlier. So one of the ways, right, we employ melodics. One of the things that you can do when it comes to vocals and making the vocals sound a little bit bigger is to change and switch from a mono delay, right? In this case, in the verses, it's a mono delay. And when the chorus kicks in, all right, and when let's play from the verse, right? Mono delay. Mono delay. And when the chorus kicks in, it kicks in a stereo delay. Right? Okay. So we kick in a stereo delay whenever it comes into this part. It's not very obvious. How come? Let me just take a quick look. FX channels. Okay, right. Because this is muted. That's why. So let's play it again. Let me play this part again. Right. Maybe I'll play this first chorus. It's easier to hear. Okay, listen to the spaces in between. You can hear the delays actually are spreading to the sides as well. So this is one of the things that we employ, right? You have like a mono delayed in the verses so that it's like centered. And then when the chorus kicks in, boom, it becomes wider, it becomes bigger. So all these little things help to make that vocal, right, sound bigger when you hit a chorus. Okay, so there are plenty of other tricks as well. So all of these other layers are all employing some other stuff. Now, I actually threw in some of the doubles, okay? Some of the double tracks, same pitch shifting kind of a trick, right? But instead of using the a meta pitch, I actually use a little alder bar from Sound Toys. Now this one is pitched up an octave, so let me just find that spot where we where we played with it, and it's right here, this part here. So let's listen to it. Firstly, okay, vocals. See what happens here.
Are we sinners? Are we saints? We're no one.
Right. So the doubles are actually pitched up and layered with an octave above this time round. Right. Let's maybe solo it. Okay. Okay. You can see the meta pitch is off. Right. The automation for meta pitch is now off when it gets to this part. And maybe let me just solo the doubles so that you can hear the altar boy effect. All right.
We're no one. We're nothing.
To me, you know, this
By the way,
to me this it is more of a much a haunting thing to have that octave. You know, it's almost like a very ghost, like a banshee wailing. All right, the description lah, right, of a banshee wailing, something like that. So I decided to layer that around this section actually. So maybe let's listen to how it would sound again. Let's compare. So right, so here is with the meta pitch with the octave lower.
are we sinners? Are we saints?
Then you hear the ghostly.
We're no one.
Yeah, this part.
We're nothing.
Yeah, because the words, the lyrics itself will inform some of the decisions behind some of the creative processing things. We're no one, we're nothing. So it felt right, it felt appropriate to have that ghostly voice, octave, high octave voice there. Well, at least it made sense to me lah. Okay, very cool. Let's move on. I think that's pretty much the vocal treatments. So some of the BVs, let's see if there's anything interesting down here. Okay, the backing vocals are again pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward, just a little bit of EQ, high pass, low pass, tiny bit of notches here and there. Very straightforward. Yep, that's it. The BVs are very straightforward. Okay, so let's look at maybe one section here, because I think there might be something cool.
We're all just special.
All right, okay, so we're not hearing it because it is not being triggered. Let's me turn on the effects channel first, then we will hear it. Okay, because you're not hearing it. Da 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 da. Group tracks. Where's the mix groups? All effects. Okay, there we go. Let's go to this word, the special again, where these BVs come in. Let's listen.
Special, just special.
Okay, here we go. One more time.
Special, just special.
Right. So I actually introduced a delay there, a delay throw on the word special. Okay, maybe in context. Let's listen in context with the whole track, okay? To sort of see what I mean. Let's play this part. Okay, da 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 da. Something's out of sync. Okay. Oh, hang on. I think some plugin has made it go a little bonkers already. Hang on a second. Why is it going a little bit weird? Yeah, let's go back here first. Okay, right. Something is off with the timing. One of the plugins is causing it to delay, I think. Right, let me sort out and figure out which one it is. Okay, come on, man. Yeah, it's suddenly become late already. Why is it? Why does it becomes delayed? Let's do it one more time.
Free fall.
Okay, right. So sometimes I think when turning on and off these plugins, the latency compensation goes a little out of whack. So let's see. Oh no, it's not that. I actually accidentally moved it. You see, my bad. Okay, all right, my bad. Let's do it. I accidentally changed the tempo. That's why. Okay. Okay, let's cycle back to that section. Okay, just listen to that effect.
Just special.
Do you hear that? So on the word special, I threw in a delay throw in there because, yeah, that word, it seemed appropriate to have that effect there, right? Special. Let's turn off, maybe let's turn off some of the drums and the guitar. Let's focus on the vocal again so you can hear the effect.
By the way, 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 all just special. Can't come home.
Not only that, I think one of the tracks I actually added distortion to it, like this particular double. Yeah, there is this decapitator distortion. Let's listen to it.
All just special.
Yeah. So on the word special, not only do you have that effect, but you have on one of the layers, right? It's like super distorted. So that really gives impact and meaning to that word lah. So I thought I'd share that with you all just to show you some of the interesting effects and the thought process and the rationale behind why I added those in. So that distorted thing comes in and out on a couple of parts, I think. So where else does it come in? Yeah, here, I think.
We're no one.
Oh no, it's not there. I think here. Let's listen to it.
Coming. This is your.
Yeah, some of these highlighted points, you see, let's listen to this.
This is your.
So that is, running through Decapitator. It's distorted.
The only one that stays.
Yeah. So remember earlier I talked about adding distortion to add energy. So, especially when it gets to these later parts, all of these additional layers were added, just to give a bit more oomph to the vocal. And so, that informs me to, hey, why not, that particular layer, let's add distortion to it, you see? Let's distort the vocal over there. So, again, these are all subtle things, right? They happen in context. Is very, very important. It sounds like there's a lot of distortion here right now, but in actual fact, context, right? When everything's playing, yeah. So in context, it's just adds all the energy is being extracted out of it, lah. All right, cool. We're almost there. Just very quickly, let me just touch on strings, okay? Right, so now strings, there are actually 4 tracks for strings, and this is actually very, very important, okay? It's an often overlooked thing. Now, of course, if you have orchestration, if you learn orchestration, or if you're exposed to classical music, then you will know lah, all right? Now, string sections, generally you have, right, in a typical orchestra, it's divided into your first violin, second violin, viola, and cello. And hence, writing your parts that way makes for real realistic string parts, okay? So, let's listen to the strings as a whole. Let's listen to it. All right, because and with proper voice leading, I'm not going to go into all that in depth, because very often the mistake that even some formally trained musicians, right, or arrangers, especially if they're piano players, when they come to writing string parts, is very often they employ too many, too thick of a voicing for strings. So if you can, you restrict yourself to maybe these four parts. You see, violin, second violin, viola, cello. If that will be one of the cool things, all right? One would be the important and key things to making a string part work. So let's listen to maybe first violin. Typically, I think it's holding the highest, the top note. Right? It's holding the top note. Second violin is an octave lower. But actually it splits into a voicing there. Da, da, da. Viola. What was an octave low? Right, okay, yeah. So the first two notes are unis octave, right? Octave is about da, da, but that third note is where it splits into harmony. Okay, let's listen. Let's listen to the cello first. See what does it do. Also in an octave, but it's holding the root. Yeah, as I guessed it already, the cello's holding the root. So let's listen to this. Unison and split. Split. Yeah, the voicings go up. Right. I think I love what the viola is doing actually. Is it the viola? Viola parts, right? Viola players are so underrated and underappreciated. Sometimes the viola parts, the magic is there. Especially the timbre and the timbre and range of the viola. It's really what gives the melancholic character there, The violins are, usually the bright, brash, outspoken ones. The viola is sometimes the one that gives the darkness to it. Okay, so that's where it's cool. So those are the string parts. Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, and then piano is also pretty straightforward. It's just a single piano line. Yeah, just a little alternating pattern. That's all. All right, so nothing much to show there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. All right, we pretty much covered through everything: the drums, the bass, guitars. Right, very very interesting. Now let me just very see whether did I. Okay, you're right. Now, in some songs, in some mixes, and if you watch some of the previous live streams, very often, if it was a song that has got your typical verse, chorus kind of a structure, very often one of the things that I do is I automate, okay, the stereo, right? The stereo here, okay. There you go. It's easier to see now. So that it will be a subtle bump up. It's one of the oldest tricks again. Just automate the stereo, your master bus, so that you just bump up the level by maybe about a dB and a half every time you kick into a chorus section. But in this song, right, in this project, in this track, I didn't do it because the sections itself have got so much contrast in between. You don't really need it, lah, right? So in maybe a popish song where something is a little bit more static, a lot of contemporary radio stuff is very very static, in terms of dynamics. But here, because there is dynamics existing in the song itself and the way that it's arranged, I don't need to employ and use that tool. And that's pretty much actually. And sorry, I think there's a lot of shout outs, a lot of stuff that's going on in the chat. Really really cool. Let me just take a look and see if there's anything interesting that I missed. Very cool. That's very cool. They've got a bunch of people, right, chiming in the chat as well. Sorry, right. Whenever I do this, I can't really attend to the chats, but super cool. We had people. Let me just go and look back all the way up. All right. Okay. Let me just mention right all the people that were in the chat. Okay. Menaka Devi said hi. Yep. Can't wait. Right. As well. Let's see. Leslie, thank you for really sitting in, man. Right, and all the great comments, right, that you've added in. Da, 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 da. Right, okay. Any male singing? All right. Hey, solo singing. Okay, right. Very cool. Thanks, Minaka. All right, for the comments in there. Dipashi, right? Yes, that's you. The vocals are too good, and the mixing, amazing job, guys. Thank you. Right. Shafinas, right. Thank you, right. Bayfighter, Faris, Dr. Walid here. Hey, all your doctor friends come and join on the stream, is it? I really appreciate it, man. Right. All right. I think in tonight's live stream, the collective IQ of the audience is perhaps the highest one ever in Recorda because so many doctors are here. Awesome. Okay. I apologize if I Supreme Medic message retracted. Okay, I'm not sure who that is. Mangala Sekar, well done, Amrita. Okay, super cool. All right. KKK and yeah, all good. Yeah, that's it. Here we go. All right. So, yep, we bring it that brings me to the end, Thanks for watching this live stream, okay? The uh the song this song is actually already done, although it's not out yet. I think stay tuned. The details you want to find out more about, okay, Atirma, right? You can head down in the description below. Check out, right? I think her social media there. She's got TikTok, she's got Instagram. You can follow her. She's got really cool stuff, right? And a cool, interesting content. Check out her music as well. Stay tuned, all right? Follow her, especially when this album comes out. I can't say when. I don't know when yet. It's still a work in progress, but that's why you should follow her account, okay? Right. Thank you so much. We're calling it a night. Thank you so much for being an awesome audience. If you're watching this right now on the live stream, appreciate that you joined us. Join me. Or if you're watching this later on a re-recording as well, I'm really thankful. Do leave a like. Do leave a comment if you're watching down. If you have any questions about this process, right? If you're watching this later and you want to hit me up, you want to ask me about something, please do. Contact me, either leave a comment down in the video. I'll always make sure that I'll reply, or you can always reach out to me to any of my other social media platforms as well. Okay. Before I go, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to sort of support support the channel, you can also become a patron. Right. Check it out. Info is all in the description, right, down below. There's some perks. There's some special benefits as well, and and what else can I say? Right, let's call it a wrap. Okay, right. See you next time in another live stream or perhaps another video. Check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. Really appreciate it. Good night to Atirma. Very awesome. You're super talented. Really cool music that I've had the opportunity of working on. Right. And shout out to Afik as well. Good night, Afik. Okay. I'll see you again real soon. We'll be working on the rest of the songs on this on the album. And hey, Zechariah just chimed in. Hey Zechariah, it's been a while. It's been a long time since I've done any of this stuff, man. And appreciate you chiming in, man. How you doing, Zach? Okay, all right. Hope you're doing well. We should, connect a little bit more, hopefully, right? But everyone's back to their own lives. Everyone's back to their own schedules. Thanks for chiming in, man. Really do appreciate it. It's good to see a familiar name and a familiar face down in the chat, especially, you know, Zachariah has been one of the really loyal regular viewers of this channel, especially during the MCO days, during the MCO times. Anyway, yeah, I'll leave you with the track, a little bit of the music in the background. So, but stay tuned again. Once again, subscribe, like, comment. Good night, folks. Peace, love, and music.